Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. You are attending the side event, Empowering Women and Girls and Building Climate Resilience, how the biodiversity and reproductive health sectors can achieve greater results for people and planet. My name is Tu Ba Huing, and I'm the Senior Technical Advisor for Environment and Climate Change at FHI 360. I'm also a researcher at Melbourne University, Australia. And FHI 360 is a member of IUCN Biodiversity Family Planning Task Force. I'm honored to be your moderators for today's session. Thank you for your participation, attention to this session, and also to our virtual participants. We are here, and we would all agree that there's mounting proof that there are numerous ways through which climate change affects population health. The Population Health and Environment PHE approach to community development aims to simultaneously improve access and equity to primary healthcare services while also helping communities conserve biodiversity, manage natural resources, and develop sustainable livelihoods. In addition to improving health and conservation outcomes, the integrated PHE approach may support people to become more resilient and adapt to climate change. Now, COP28 marks my 11th COP, and I must say before coming here, I felt a bit like another one. Daunting task, and all of us would agree we had to navigate through the crowds, getting here, all of that. But this has all faded away when I think about the incredible opportunities to be in this room with all of you. I have to say I've been in conservation and climate space all my professional career. I started with WWF and IUCN many years ago. I don't remember how many World Congress I've been to since my postgrad years as well. So I'm very much, that's my home, but also now we have this, global health, community. So I'm very honored to be here with you, with leaders in conservation, development, and health sectors. Over the next hour, our distinguished speakers will share their insights and compelling evidence, PHE evidence from diverse ecosystems. We'll delve into transformative impacts of integrating health, gender, conservation initiatives under PHE concept. Together, we will celebrate new developments on cross-sectoral collaborations, weaving a tapestry of benefits for both people and planet. And it is a journey that encompasses health, gender equality, and conservation. And I'm very thrilled to embark on this journey with you. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Kristen Walker-Pine-Miller, Senior Vice President, Center for Communities and Conservation at Conservation International, and Chair of IUCN's Commission on Environment, Economic, and Social Policies. Kristen, please. In fact, maybe we can share this. Thank you very much for the conservation support, Commission support to IUCN Biodiversity Family Planning Task Force. Could you please shed light on the dynamics of collaboration between the Commission and the task force?
Sure. Well, thank you. And thank you all for joining us today and for those joining us online. And I think we have a lot of folks here from the health sector, especially online. And first and foremost, I want to highlight, and we just came from a session literally 15 minutes before this one started, about IUCN's 7 commissions. And they are 7 expert commissions that bring together a diversity of expertise from across multiple sectors to generate knowledge, create influence, and improve how we do biodiversity conservation globally. And for those of you who may be joining online who come from the health sector, you may think of IUCN in terms of nature, which is extremely important, in biodiversity and species, and we'll hear from one of my colleagues later. But IUCN also has a very important role in the social dimensions of conservation. And the Commission on Environment, Economics, and Social Policy is one of 7 commissions, and we really do look at those elements. We bring together the economic piece, we work on gender gender, we work on rights-based approaches, and cover a huge gamut of those social dimensions. And we have about 1,500 experts who join us to do that work. And part of that work, we've done a lot of work in conjunction with IUCN on gender and women and girls in that process. And I think, as we see those elements and we see the work of our members, and many members have embarked on work on population health and environment and that integration in our conservation efforts. And it's still a growing movement in the conservation community. And I think one area that has allowed us and is allowing us as a union to move forward is the resolution that has come forth from the last IUCN Congress, looking at removing barriers to rights-based voluntary family planning. And it's been a huge opportunity, especially to convene with members and also across commissions on the task force, bringing that expertise, looking at those issues, and being able to move that agenda forward in both, not just from a Commission on Environment, Economic, and Social Policy space, but across to our Species Survival Commission and how we can incorporate these elements into our conservation planning. And I think one important thing to add is that you don't have to be part of a member organization to join a commission. We welcome and invite those from the health sector to join the commission, my commission, which is CESP, but I think bringing that expertise across multiple commissions is really important because we are in a crisis right now. We have to be looking at these issues. We're just coming out of a pandemic, so we have to be able to combine all of these elements from various aspects of the health sector. But what we're here today to focus on is that experience that we have in the task force and bringing together expertise, focusing on how you look at the pathway to climate resilience and looking at the issues of women and girls. So I will pass back my remarks to you and keep this agenda moving forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that because I know you were here before. I saw you and I'm like, you need to get some water. And I know you have, to run off to another event as well. But thanks for the invitation to have the health communities to be in your space. And this is exactly why we're here. We want to go to each other's space. We want to talk. So yeah, really appreciate your time. Now, let's let me remind you, I promise that it's going to be a very exciting session because we have 7 speakers and it has to be fast moving, but hopefully we can inspire you along the way. Please join me to welcoming our next distinguished panelist, Dr. Samu Keliso Dube, Executive Director of FP 2030. Welcome to Dubai. I know that you just arrived, we appreciate that you being here immediately in time for this. So Samu is steering FP 2030's effort at the nexus of health, climate, and biodiversity. We eager to delve into the essence of your slogan that I saw in the website, join us in a future where all women and girls have the freedom and ability to lead a healthy lives. Please, the podium is yours.
Thank you very much for ushering in that future, right? Where everyone, everywhere can decide if and when they want to have children and have the ability to do so. So good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Samu Dube and I represent FP 2030. I think there is an interesting question in the room, right? Like, where is this nexus around family planning, biodiversity, IUCN? It's my first COP conference, and last year it clashed with ICFP, as you know. And I was wondering, why are we actually creating this dichotomy between population, women and girls, and the issue that is urgent and is at hand about climate? I think I would start my remarks by saying, what is family planning? So FP 2030 is Family Planning 2030. What is family planning? For me, family planning is the ability to detect, determine, and to enact how many, if and, especially if you don't, it's still fine, how many children you want to have. It is when nations everywhere have the ability to enable women, even those who are struggling with subfertility or infertility, to have children. It is us creating a more resilient society, especially responding to what is kind of the disaster of our lifetime, the issues of climate change. And I think the past decade has shown that a doubling of climate and weather-related disasters, and it is estimated that the majority of people who are displaced by climate change, as you all know, are women, according to the United Nations. And these displacements, which you all know about, and perhaps you are even more familiar than myself, they occur in contexts where there is already existing fragility and insecurity. And they call for all of us today to approach and ensure that there are comprehensive approaches that address this complex reality of women and girls in areas where they live. We believe at FP 2030 that voluntary, and you said it, Christian has just moved out of the room, voluntary, rights-based family planning and access to reproductive health contributes to climate change resilience and socioeconomic development through improved health and well-being of women and their children. Imagine a young girl who actually has got ability to access family planning and contraception. She will be better off in responding to the disasters of climate change. That's the world that we want to create. And I think there is nothing that is wrong with that. That is why we are in the room. We are in the room not about population anxiety or control. We are in the room because we want to build better adaptation strategies and resilience strategies, especially in prevailing economic and climate environments. Who is FP 2030 and why do we care? About 40% of women experiencing displacements, as you know, they want to avoid becoming pregnant. Yet incidents of rape and other forms of gender-based violence increase during times of crisis, affecting women and girls more acutely. Ladies and gentlemen and colleagues, it's time where health systems, we could invest better in health systems that are resilient to this very cause, because health systems become heavily strained and skilled care in these environments is often out of reach. This is why FP 2030, and I've got my colleague Oren sitting here, has got a key focus on emergency preparedness and resilience, and specifically including family planning and sexual health and rights in our plans. Our key publication, which we can make available, that is ready to save lives, lays out how country governments can best prepare for increasing weather disasters such as climate changes, including how to ensure access to family planning and reproductive health care in emergency settings. We are also focusing on how to build more resilient communities, more resilient families, more resilient government responses through rights-based voluntary family planning that can better adapt to our changing climate change. But I think we need to address the issues and the concerns around population control. This is not about population control. Planned families are usually healthier families. They are more stable, they are more resilient, and if you have the number of children that you desire, you are more prepared for whatever crisis comes next, be it effects of climate change, displacements, or something else. And to be clear, as an organization, we are advocating for people to have as many children as they want to have. FP 2030 is not in the business of trying to tell women or communities, for that matter, to have a certain number of children. And we are even steering away from this desire around 2.1. I recently came from Thailand, where many of the countries there there is an obsession about replacement value of 2.1. Rights-based means women should choose if and when and how many children they want to have. Let people decide on the size of their families. And lastly, I want to just talk about something that is important. How are we going to advance this discourse? We will advance it if we plan well and we are intentional about what we want to do and what we want to achieve. I see the organized movement around climate, for me, saying we need certain pots of funding to respond to climate. Well, that funding would go and will have a return on investment if we are clear that some of it needs to go to healthcare, if we are clear that some of it needs to invest specifically in women. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about sexual health and reproductive rights. Only 5% of multilateral climate funding goes to adaptation. of that, 5%, only 1% is allocated to health programs. This needs to change. An even smaller amount of that money goes to rights-based family planning. Today, we've got about 257 million unmet need for family planning. People who want to prevent pregnancies, but they don't have an ability to do so. I'm sure this is an easy, low-hanging fruit that we can all fund. Let us remove the silos that may exist around funding, fund holistic, people-centered approaches to build resilience. Let us start with women. Any program that invests in women and starts with women, often in my world, is a winner. COP, the conservationist community, and gender, that needs to come together even better. The climate community, for me, needs to do a better job of centering women and girls. It's all about people. More than 54 million women, girls and young people are displaced, as you know. They live in humanitarian settings because of conflict, because of climate-induced migration, other crises that you all know about. But women are the primary people impacted by this. So let us invest in them first. And gender, for me, and climate change are inherently linked. Even in this room, even in this pavilion, even in this center, how many women are leading this effort? Not for us, without us. We are not just beneficiaries of decisions that are made. We want to be architects of those decisions because they firmly affect us. Thank you, and those are my opening remarks.
Thank you, Samu. I have to say that I was sitting there and, captivated by your speech, like, wow. And you've given me all this new language as well, about the topic. So thanks so much. And I hope that we all feel the same with this speech from Samu. Now, let's, so we've just listened to Kristen and Samu, who set out big picture landscape, directions. Now let's go zoom in and look at the program approach, like how can we actually operationalize some of these ideas on the ground. So I would like to we have two speakers here. First, we're very lucky to have Sharon Young, a Global Director of Partnership Network at Blue Ventures. And Blue Ventures is an IUCN member which is working to restore the world's oceans and improve livelihoods of fishing communities. Sharon, could you please guide us through the practical dimensions of fostering cross-sectoral collaborations, specifically in supporting our precious marine ecosystems? The stage is yours.
Hello, good evening, everyone. So the question that comes to mind is, what does a marine conservation organization, what are we doing in health, right? So it's my pleasure to try and highlight that to you today. Throughout the world, coastal communities are most impacted, especially those in the tropics where I'm from, are most impacted by the effects of climate change. And the previous 10 years have really been the hottest on record, and that shows that extreme weather events have affected every facet of our lives. It is therefore imperative that we all work together in an interdisciplinary and integrated manner to safeguard communities by securing and strengthening their resilience to climate change, helping them to absorb the shocks and to recover quickly from the impacts of climate change. So, okay, sorry about that. So Blue Ventures, as a marine conservation organization, we have existed for the last 20 years, and we believe in putting people first. We have been supporting coastal fishing communities across 14 countries throughout the tropics, ranging from Madagascar to Indonesia, all the way to Belize in Latin America and the Caribbean, to help them rebuild fisheries, restore ocean life, and eventually build lasting pathways to prosperity. Our challenge continue to be, our challenge continue to be that the vulnerabilities of these coastal communities that we work in are heavily impacted by these climate conditions. And their vulnerabilities continue to deepen because they are heavily dependent on the ocean for livelihoods and for food security. So as we see, once the ocean continues to warm, sea level rises and the coastlines continue to deteriorate, coastal communities will continue to be affected. And obviously the lives of millions will be affected because they heavily depend on the marine ecosystems for their livelihoods. Our work in Madagascar actually began 2 decades ago, and it continues to increase globally. We have been working with several partners. Thank you. Right. So our work actually began over 2 decades ago in Madagascar, in some of the most remote coastal areas of that country. And let me fast forward. Yes. So we have supported more than 70 communities throughout the country to support their investment in their livelihood development. And what we do is actually bring partners together in a network to advocate for reforms that they would need to support their livelihoods. Why do we do this? We found that human health and the health of the marine ecosystem is inextricably linked. We cannot separate the two. And these isolated coastal communities are even more vulnerable. They're disconnected, they operate in an information vacuum and are far disconnected from any support in many instances. So when we first went to Madagascar 20 years ago, we could not tackle the conservation issue without first addressing the pressing need that the communities expressed to us, which in this instance was their health needs. And with that in mind, we decided as an organization that we need to invest in supporting the health of our communities. We started with help in supporting family planning issues, in addressing sexual and maternal health, and addressing to some degree child's health. And then we eventually broadened into water and sanitation health and increasingly nutritional health. But we can't do this as a marine conservation organization. So what we have been doing is partnering with health experts over the years. And we form strategic alliances with organizations like FP 2030, MSI Madagascar, to ensure that we are bringing that coalition of the willing to the communities to help them to thrive and address the pressing needs that they have expressed to us. Our partnerships are mutually reinforcing. Our partners utilizes the benefits of our strong foundations in the communities and our trust that we've established over the years in the community to help with logistics, and then we help to organize and bringing them together to offer the health services to these communities. This allows for communities to take on the much needed help support that they request from us, and have eventually materialized into areas where we see women more actively participating in decision-making related to natural resource management. We're extremely proud of the impact that we've been having on all the communities that we've worked across the globe, where we're seeing more women having the ability to choose what they want to do, whether or not they want to stay at home, whether or not they want to invest in their livelihoods, whether or not they want to support their families. And that for us has been the greatest impact, just by virtue of the fact that these women and young people now are healthier and they have the ability to decide whether or not they want to participate in their own livelihoods and also participate in the decision to protect the environment that they depend upon. So over the years, we've invested in over, we've invested in over 700 communities all over the world, 14 countries. We're working with direct partners on the ground to deliver these most pressing needs that they need every day. And we're seeing more and more the interest of other organizations to partner with us to provide the services that are needed for our communities. And health is just one facet of the needs that we've seen in these communities that we work. So at Blue Ventures, we remain firm in our belief that when you put people first, the ecosystem will thrive, and that continues to be our mantra going forward. We believe in our bold ambition of thriving fishers, thriving oceans, but we just don't want people to survive. We want them to thrive, because that is where we'll see the greatest impact on our ecosystem. So I hope that I'm able to share in a very short period of time how we are helping to bridge the divide between, and that dichotomy, as you say, where we think that you can only focus on conservation, or you can only focus on health, or you can only focus on education. But from where we stand, people's needs and the needs of the environment are not competing interests. They're mutually beneficial, they're mutually important, and so we need to treat them as equal priorities, and that's our objective going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. We are about 6 minutes behind according to my agenda, so I have to speed up a little bit. But I like the word thriving, not only for ecosystem, because, you know, for us, but also for communities and that we're working with. So thank you. Now, evidence of population health and environment on its applicability transcends marine ecosystem to other ecosystem for those who are, you know, in the environment space, to wetland landscape as well. And we have an example, and let's hear from my dear colleague Karina Hirsch from the Margaret Pike Trust on this example.
Thank you so much, Tuba, and thank you for having me here. So I represent the Margaret Pike Trust, an organization whose vision is one of a future without barriers to family planning in a climate-resilient world with healthy ecosystems. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a very important vision. Because of our vision, we are the only member of the IUCN to also have over 50 years of expertise and experience in sexual and reproductive health. At the last World Conservation Congress in Marseille, I'm very proud that our organization led a movement to create a global alliance of NGOs, of indigenous peoples organizations, and of governments to pass the resolution that was mentioned to you before, that Kristen mentioned, the resolution on why and how the elimination and removing barriers to rights-based and voluntary family planning should be a part of sustainable conservation. So as an organization, we've got three main areas of work. We train healthcare professionals in sexual and reproductive health. We also establish partnerships that integrate reproductive health, livelihoods, and environmental action. And we work to achieve and effect policy change that support those work streams. So moving from marine ecosystems to wetland ecosystems, I would like to take you now to Southwest Uganda to tell you about our work that integrates those three work streams, to address the integrated challenges that have been identified by some communities in Rukiga district in Southwest Uganda. So in Southwest Uganda, there is a hospital, Rugarama Hospital, where we have been asked to provide sexual and reproductive health services. We knew from the hospital and from the community that there were very significant and a variety of barriers to rights-based voluntary family planning in what is a very remote and rural area. So that's the catchment area of Rugarama Hospital, to give you a sense of where we are in the world. At the same time, you had the International Crane Foundation, also a large IUCN member organization working in many countries, who was also working in the area. Why? They were working to conserve the endangered gray-crowned crane, which is the national bird of Uganda. And the national gray-crowned crane relies on the wetlands, and the people living in that area also rely on the wetlands for their livelihoods, for their food, and for their water. So you start to see the connections, and that this particular community could be a prime site for a population health and environment type project. So what we did was we introduced Rugarama Hospital and the International Crane Foundation, and then, because this is very important, we're always asked for evidence, and somehow when it comes to women and girls, it seems that we need even more evidence. So the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with here, came in and designed the monitoring and evaluation, rigorous monitoring and evaluation framework for this project. So we spent all the partners together spent about 6 months conducting ethnographic research to understand exactly the ways in which the community were experiencing these challenges and how we could genuinely work in partnership to respond to their needs and to their wishes. And actually, the research highlighted that the community themselves had the deep understanding of how these issues were all related. They understood and they knew that wetlands, they slow floods and they provide food and water. They also were seeing how the erosion on their upland farms, they literally had to follow the soil down into the valley, into the wetlands. So they had no choice but to start cultivating the wetlands so that they could grow crops to feed their families. Ladies and gentlemen, we would all do the same if we had to feed our families. We would also burn the wetlands and farm on the wetlands. And you see how this is an issue. They also knew and were experiencing the effects of climate change, which meant they had unpredictable seasons and rainfall patterns, and they were leading to crop failures, and the floods were destroying their crops. They also wanted to have better healthcare services because, as Dr. Dubé was saying before, women and girls were not able to plan. And as a 16-year-old girl, if you would like to take a decision over your body, it's not about contraception, it's about planning your life. Whether you can engage in income-generating activities, continue your education. It's the holistic and long-term effects that we are talking about. So they were not able to access those kinds of healthcare services, much less were they able to access dental checkups, eye exams, all the things that many of us in this room take for granted. So that is the context we're in. And because of these interconnected challenges, it made sense to develop a project that would integrate environmental action with healthcare and livelihoods in climate-smart agriculture. So working in partnership, that's exactly what we did. So on the conservation front, we've implemented community conservation agreements with local community conservation groups, working on how to conserve the wetlands and the cranes. In terms of livelihoods, many thousands of households have been trained on how to improve and diversify their livelihoods, specifically by implementing more environmentally sustainable and climate-smart agricultural techniques. In terms of health, the healthcare services have been strengthened, and yes, the family planning and sexual reproductive health services have been strengthened, but so have interventions to address malnutrition and waterborne diseases, which kill many thousands of children needlessly in this community. And so more frequent and improved services have been brought to this very remote, rural, ladies and gentlemen, last mile communities. When we talk about last mile communities, this is what they look like. So it's important for us to bear in mind that this program we're talking about is funded by the UK government's flagship biodiversity funding mechanism, the Darwin Initiative. So the UK government have recognized that in order to have sustainable conservation, effective conservation, you need to integrate healthcare actions into that conservation action, and that's quite significant. So what's interesting about this program also, as I said, is the aspect of design. So design the project to allow for rigorous comparative analysis and to be able to test the hypothesis that greater conservation, health, and gender outcomes result because of the fact that the actions to address these challenges are integrated. So there's two types of community, two types of project communities. One is parallel, one is integrated. So because you have obviously there's a moral responsibility. So in both types of communities, community members benefit from the same health, livelihood, environmental actions. The difference is in the way they are delivered. In the parallel areas, health actions are undertaken separately from the climate-smart agriculture and livelihood and environmental actions, as if two projects were happening in parallel. In the integrated sites, because of the level of understanding that the community have and that they have shared and that we have then integrated into the project design, every single action is delivered in an integrated way using the connections the way the community have referred to the interrelated challenges. And the project partners deliver in an integrated way. Now, this has indeed led to not 1 + 1 = 2, but 1 + 1 = 3. So one of the examples of we see better and greater results in the areas, and we can see that our hypothesis is correct because, for example, if you look at the number of new members of the community conservation groups in the parallel sites, they have increased by more than double than in the parallel sites because the people feel ownership. They're listening to us. We don't just have a conservation issue. No, we have a whole host of issues, and they feel that their lives challenges are being addressed in the right way, and they feel ownership over this project. Additionally, there are peer educators that go house to house to speak about the concerns that households, that families have. If you look at the number of home visits in the integrated sites, look how they have spiked because the peer educators are able to talk about livelihoods. They're able to talk about health. They're able to talk about conservation. They can address these interconnected needs as opposed to the ones in the parallel sites. And there are a number of additional, what are these additional co-benefits that is thanks to the fact that there is integration. There are more women who feel empowered to attend clinics and get healthcare services. There's also co-benefits in the conservation side. There is the Sitatunga is more protected. There are more Sitatunga in the area because the area is more protected. So we see that our hypothesis is correct. So lastly, I think I just want to say when we're here, and we've heard a lot of the opening speeches, a lot of big changes, big announcements, I'm very proud to talk about a trajectory to achieving policy change. But I think every time we think about policy change, what does the success of that policy change look like? We have to think about, does it change somebody's life? And only if it changed somebody's life, through their livelihoods, through their health, is that an effective change? So I think I'm very proud to be part of an organization that does just that. We seek to achieve the policy change and at the same time seek to change individuals' lives and livelihoods. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Karina. I think in the conservation world, we've been talking about integrated conservation and development for decades now, and I think that there are innovation all along the way. And thanks, Sharon and Karina, for sharing concrete examples on PHE applicability. And so now we will move to the next session, where we have total a number of organizations implementing PHE projects. Increasing the interest in this approach continues to grow among stakeholders and decision makers at different levels. So our next speaker, Dr. Rima Jabado, is the Deputy Chair of the IUCN Species Survival Commission and Chair of the IUCN Shark Specialist Group. Rima, we look to hearing this update on new development on the global species actions. And after that, we'll have a 3-minute video from Dr. Goroni McCabe, Chief Conservation Officer of the Wider Institute and a member of the IUCN Primate Specialist Group on the publication of a new IUCN Conservation Action Plan. So, Rima, you have the podium.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. It's been really interesting to hear more about the perspective about how empowering women and girls can also contribute to building climate resilience. So you've heard from one of the commissions. We are the second out of the 7 commissions, the Species Survival Commission, the SSC as we call it. And this is a network of over 10,500 volunteers from around 180 countries and jurisdictions around the world. We are scientists, we are researchers, we are conservation practitioners, and we work together to address the conservation needs of animals, plants, and fungi and their habitats. We work on many things, and we really try and play a crucial role in providing scientific input and technical advice to global conservation initiatives and policymaking processes. I don't presume that all of you know the work that we do, but I hope that you've all at least heard of the Red List, the IUCN Red List of threatened species. So when you talk about a species being critically endangered, or even data deficient, this is because our experts have evaluated it and decided on what the status is. And this has been a key metric in many global conservation targets. In 2019, we actually met here in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi. We brought together over 300 of our leaders to discuss and share ideas and learn from each other to coordinate our work on species at national, regional, and international levels. And as a result of this meeting, we had a declaration, the Abu Dhabi Call for Global Species Conservation Action. Back then, we thought that 2020 was going to be the year with so many decisions that were going to be taken at the global level. For obvious reasons, that was slightly delayed, and a lot of these decisions took place in 2022. And in the meantime, what we did is that we wanted to make sure that our voice was heard, and we wanted to appeal to governments, to international agencies, and the private sector to tackle threats to species, to halt species extinction, and prevent human-driven extinction so that species and habitats could start recovering. So in 2022, finally, 2023 we are now, 2 months ago, we actually launched what's called the GSAP, the Global Species Action Plan. And this document was developed to provide guidance and support for the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. It delineates specific actions that can be taken to achieve each of the targets and provides a list of resources that can support. Relevant to our discussion here is that under Target 14, the multiple values of biodiversity are integrated into decision-making levels. At all levels, we have a text that states that we need to ensure removal of barriers to right-based voluntary family planning. So this highlights that our experts from around the world also recognize the need to focus on health and gender solutions when tackling threats to species and climate change. So very much in line with the projects that we've just heard about and the population health and environment model, I see this as a considerable progress since I think it's the first time that it's explicit within our SSC strategies and an opportunity that should and can be built on moving forward. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Grania McCabe, Chief Conservation Officer for Wilder Institute Calgary Zoo in Canada, and Hi, I'm Dr. Grania McCabe, Chief Conservation Officer for Wilder Institute Calgary Zoo in Canada, and co-editor of a new IUCN Conservation Action Plan for Cercocebus and Mandrillus monkeys. Cercocebus and Mandrillus monkeys include 9 species and 2 subspecies. They are some of the least studied of the Afro-Eurasian primates and also among the most threatened. The species are at risk of extinction due to threats including commercial and subsistence hunting, habitat fragmentation, local demands for natural resources, small-scale agriculture, and the expansion of settlements in areas with poor healthcare, barriers to family planning, and resulting localized and increasing anthropogenic pressures. Given the limited knowledge and threatened conservation status of most of these species, there is an urgent need for a collaborative, region-wide approach to catalyze and facilitate efforts to ensure their protection. I can today announce that the Primate Specialist Group of the IUCN is launching a new conservation action plan, including taxon-specific conservation actions devised under 6 overarching themes. Overarching themes include habitat restoration and enhancing protection. But the specialist group is proud that we are among the first of these specialist groups to also include an overarching theme of responding to public health needs of neighboring human populations. If we take the critically endangered Tana River mangabey as an example, the plan recommends working with reproductive health organizations to support the processes of analyzing local barriers to family planning and seeking to establish programmatic partnerships with health NGOs, the Ministry of Health, and others to design and implement new PHE programs. Conservationists know that successful conservation includes real community engagement and livelihood support. The newly published Conservation Action Plan is one example how the conservation sector also understands that greater results can be achieved by working in partnership with the health sector. We are also aware of the social and health challenges faced by the surrounding communities and understand how improving access to reproductive health care is fundamental for the empowerment of women and girls, their health and their well-being, and is also key to unlocking the full potential of conservation. The plan will soon be available on the IUCN website and at the dedicated site cam-conservation.org. Thank you.
Rima, to sharing us this new development in the Global Species Action Plan. I'm very excited about that with the text inclusion, and also hopefully it will guide activities in the future. Now, this is going to be our last section, part of today's session. I think today's session is offer a perfect opportunity for us to announce and celebrate new PHE partnerships and publications. We have Dr. Harriet Davis Mostert, Director of Impact at Conserve Global. She will share with us new developments.
Hello, my name is Harriet Davies Mostert, and I'm the Director of Impact at Conserve Global, an organisation that was established in 2021 to work with communities across Africa to achieve landscape-scale conservation. I'm also a member of the IUCN's Biodiversity and Family Planning Task Force, and I have been since its inception. Sub-Saharan Africa has an extensive network of national parks, encompassing a massive 850,000 square kilometres. But what many people don't know is that there is an area more than twice this size that is made up of other categories of protected areas. These comprise of ex-hunting blocks, many of which are now unmanaged and economically fallow due to the decline of the trophy hunting industry. These are the orange areas on the map. And secondly, there are community conservancies, many of which are deriving very limited benefits from conservation. These are the red areas on the map, and you can see that they're clustered in Namibia and Kenya, countries that have been at the forefront of community-led conservation. These concessions and community conservancies are Africa's conservation connective tissue, and they act to buffer national parks and create connectivity across landscapes. A unique feature is that people live in and depend on these landscapes. 60% of sub-Saharan Africa's population is rural, and more than 60% of rural people in the region are totally reliant on natural ecosystems for food, water, energy, health, and secure livelihoods. Unfortunately, the threats to these landscapes are severe and escalating, putting both biodiversity and livelihoods at risk. However, these landscapes also present opportunities. They're designed for the private sector with long-term tenure, and this makes them ideal incubators for the development of nature-based economies. Our big idea is to mobilize communities to leverage these unique attributes so that conservation starts solving people problems. Our vision is connected natural landscapes for resilient societies, and we work with local communities living in areas beyond national parks to build strong local institutions, secure ecosystem integrity, and unlock opportunities from intact ecosystems for the benefit of people. By 2030, our goal is to improve the management of 30,000 square kilometres of conservation areas beyond national parks. To prioritise our focus, we evaluated more than 230 concessions and identified 14 focal landscapes that meet the conditions of being large and under threat, and where there are opportunities to work for local communities to deliver real livelihood and ecosystem benefits. Most of these areas fall within the savanna biome. As we approach the end of 2023, we have 4 active project sites with several others in various stages of pipeline development. Our dream is for communities to embrace conservation as their preferred land use and become champions of conservation landscapes all over Africa. As I mentioned at the start, I've been a member of the Biodiversity and Family Planning Task Force since its inception, and I'm a passionate advocate for reproductive choice. I know the theory and about some other projects, and I've studied the PHE theories of change that are hosted by the Conservation Measures Partnership. Given the types of landscapes that Conserve Global works in, I wanted to see how it might be possible for Conserve Global to integrate PHE across our portfolio. And so we've worked with the team at Margaret Pike Trust to research and publish the brief that is being released today. We're really excited about taking some of the concrete recommendations forward at our sites in Zambia and Mozambique. If you'd like to learn more about the work of Conserve Global, please check out our website. And thanks so much for your time and attention.
And before checking the website, you can actually find out more about the research now because we have David Johnson, Chief Executive of Margaret Pike Trust, and together with Karina, they co-chair the Biodiversity and Family Planning Task Force. He undertook the research on the publication, which is being launched now. So, David.
Thank you. So you just heard from Harriet that they had 14 focal landscapes that they were particularly interested in across the 213 sub-Saharan Africa that they considered. And so we then started the process of looking at the policy environment around these focal landscapes. The 14 landscapes were in 7 different countries. So we analysed the 7 national biodiversity strategies and action plans, the NBSAPs of those countries, and then compared them. And effectively, they all said the same thing. The ministries of environment in all of these countries had highlighted that the overwhelming majority of people living in rural areas depend on the health of their local ecosystems for their food, their livelihoods, their health, and much else besides. Interestingly, every single NBSAP also highlighted that there were increasing domestic demographic pressures on those ecosystems. So it was the domestic demographic pressures that were impacting the ecosystems and therefore also impacting the health of the communities. Today's panel of speakers that you've seen is very unusual because we've had leaders in conservation and climate and health, and you don't see very much of that at COP or anywhere else or in policy either. Because the interesting thing that came out of analysing the policies, as well as the biodiversity policies, of course, made the connections I've referred to, none of them highlighted that the ministries of health had made different recommendations. All of those countries had commitments and policies to improve reproductive health services, but the Environment Ministry and the Health Ministry had not actually spoken to each other. So, in short, there is a massive overlap of the areas where PHE is relevant, because Karina referred to the last mile communities point. So there's this massive overlap of where communities are dependent on the health of ecosystems for health and livelihoods, and where the health systems are the poorest and where there's greatest barriers to family planning. So within the 14 priority sites, we actually ended up focusing down then onto 2, one in Zambia and one in Mozambique. And we wanted to go to the next stage for what are we going to do next year, which is work with IPAS and PSI, and we're joined by PSI in the room as well, about how we could actually then go to the next stage and develop new PHE projects with them next year. So this is the Futi corridor in Mozambique. This is one of the sites. The dark green area that you can see is part of a transfrontier conservation area, and that links the, in Mozambique, in the north, you can see the border in the map, the Maputo National Park, and south of the border is South Africa's Tembe Elephant Reserve. And that thin strip of land in the Futi Strip is critical for elephant migrations, as well as the migrations of lots of apex predators, including wild dogs. But the Conserve Global site is to the west of the dark green, which is the Moai Community Conservation Area, where already the Conserve Global have got an agreement to work with the communities and the community structures, and are open to working with PSI to also work on the healthcare. Thank you. So if you consider a PHE project responds to every single one of those SDGs, all of them, which kind of leads the concluding question that I would have for the conservationists in the room and the health advocates in the room, In the event that a PHE project can respond to every single one of those SDGs, why aren't we all looking at which ones we can do now? And that would be one of my calls of people, that if there is anyone watching online or in the room that's interested in exploring the PHE approach and finding a conservation partner or a health partner, we have lists of them. We have lists of health organisations and conservation organisations that would like to do this. And it's all about partnership, and it's all about working with the right people. And conservation organisations do not need to provide health services and should not be providing health services, just like round the other way, you're not going to be called upon to conserve the Futi corridor if you're a health organisation. But we feel that there is a strong movement at the moment and that is evolving, and we're hoping that we'll get more people today interested in this approach. Thank you.
Thanks, David. And you mentioned PSI, and we have a representative from PSI in the room, Alison Malmquist, Director, Sexual Reproductive Health of PSI. Alison has over 20 years of experience in developing and leading integrated public health programs in Africa and the Caribbean. Please.
Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting us here. This is for representing PSI. This is our first time at COP. Absolutely delighted and overwhelmed to be with you. As mentioned, I have the honor of serving as PSI's Director of Sexual and Reproductive Health. PSI is a global health organization. We've got more than 50 years of experience tackling complex health challenges that are affecting people and communities around the world. Perhaps more importantly, this is also personal, I think, as it may be for many of you. I am engaged in climate action in my own community, and I have aspirations of helping with conservation efforts. But I think most importantly, I'm a mother. I've got a 15-year-old girl. She's thinking about her own place, her own future, and how she engages in a world that is increasingly uncertain, and something we talk about quite a lot. In more than 30 countries worldwide, including Mozambique, we're engaging with girls and women to support their right to choose if, when, and with whom to have children. To do so, we work in partnerships with ministries of health. We work with healthcare providers at all levels of the health system, from frontline health workers like midwives, all the way up through ministers of health as they're looking at policy and planning to ensure that even the most vulnerable and marginalized communities are able to access quality, compassionate, person-centered sexual and reproductive health care wherever they are, including in the face of climate-related shocks and incidents, and at the last mile, which is where I think we meet many of the conservation organizations that are here and around the world. We know, we're here because we believe in the approach that's being put forward. And, if women and girls are able to access their SRHR care, we have a greater chance, all of us together, to attain environmental sustainability. We have a greater chance of supporting women and girls to have equitable absorptive capacity and opportunities to do more than survive, but really to thrive. And to do so, in communities that are changing and in the face of some of the disruptions that are happening. We work with girls and women and we listen to them all around the world. And they're telling us that they see and understand what's happening around them. They want opportunities and they want to be part of solutions, and solutions that are taking place in their own communities. So we think a lot about this, and we think about, how investing in sexual and reproductive health is an investment in resilience for girls and women, and that population health and environment approaches not only improve human health, but also support communities. And they help those communities to achieve, as everyone's mentioned here, sustainable livelihoods, managing their natural resources, conserving biodiversity, maintaining ecosystem services. And as David mentioned, we're a global health organization, and we will continue to be a global health organization. But we're looking for partnerships with organizations who understand these other elements, so that we're engaging much more holistically with communities and with the populations that we both care very much about. We do believe that population and health and environment approaches, some of which have been described, can ultimately, with the engagement of multiple actors, including health organizations like my own, conservation organizations, that together we can achieve much more significant and much longer lasting health and conservation outcomes than would likely occur without integration. As we look ahead in Mozambique and beyond, we come very humbly, we come very curious, and we come very inspired into this space, which in some regards is new for us. And we're excited about the opportunity to partner with Conserve Global. We're excited about the opportunity to work together to support girls and women to take ownership of their health and their lives as not just members of their communities, but really as leaders of resilient, thriving communities. Thank you so much again.
I'm very proud that we actually within time. I was a bit worried before, like, oh no, we're going over time, and then people over there will like try to kick us out from the room, but we are not. And I was asked to give a, conclusion remarks, like summarizing key points, but I think that I would walk away from this thinking, first of all, I'm so, I thank all the speakers because I learned so much about your work, and I hope that all of us here and our virtual audience as well, the language, the motivation, the inspiration, and we always ask about, okay, that's a very good idea, but does that actually work? It does. As we see, we have examples where evidence, we have a commitment, we have IUCN and FP 2030, like at that high level, and we have evidence of how it works. And as David said, this is so rare that we have environment, climate, health people that come together, and discuss solutions and innovations. So for that, I think I'm like, again, echoing what you were saying, excited about the future of the kind of things we can do together. And some who said, oh, let's this echo even beyond COP28 walls. Let's look at this panel as a catalyst for change, and whatever role you are, I hope that you walk away from this event thinking, yes, it works. Let's explore how to work together, invite each other in our sphere and find out how to work together. I think, that would be my conclusion. I'm not going to all the call for actions we already heard from our panelists, and let's carrying the insights towards the future. Thank you. And thank you to our virtual audience as well.